Welcome to a new guide on this channel, and this occasion is the Echo from Ableton. Now, this is not a review, it's a deep dive guide about this device. Now, everything is in tiny chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. Now, if you like what I do, remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, you can. Just check the links at the description. Right, so if we take a look at this one, this is the Echo version of the delay. Now, if you go to the other one, the classic one, the delay, the one that you get by default, this is like an enhanced version. I wouldn't say enhanced, you just have a lot extended controls, and you can do a lot more things that you can do with this one, but a lot of the things you can do right here, you can still do them right here. But again, you get extended control. So think of the Echo as the pro version of the delay. So if you don't know how to use this one, my recommendation is go learn how this one works first. And then this one is going to be very, very easy. So I'm going to give you a card right here at the top so you can, watch. Maybe I made a guide about this one. So you can go there first and then just come back. Now, the delay looks a little bit confusing and looks challenging, but it's actually very simple to understand, especially if you know how this one works. So right here, you have your time controls, and this is the first thing we need to learn. By default, you're going to be standing on dotted notes. Right? Just like, when you're using this one on default values, you're going to be standing on dotted notes. But the delay, this one is on 16ths. Now, on this one, you don't get that. It's just a little bit different. Now, right here, you get the controls. And of course, this is your link. And you can go up, and both are going to be going up and down. When you unlink it, you can kind of offset the timings. And this is just going to be giving you different times from left and right. Pretty simple. Now, when you're offsetting, right, and you link the right, it will always be linked to whatever the left it's doing. Now, by default, you have sync, but you can go out of the sync and you can go into time mode. And then, of course, you can just adjust your time in milliseconds. That's the whole point. Now, if I go back to the other one, and of course, you can unsync right here and do whatever you want and use a combination of time mode and sync mode, or just, use the time mode and do it manually. Now, if I go back to the sync, we are doing 1/8, but notice that it's stuck on the dotted. So this is by default. So, if you click right here, it's going to give you different options. So notes, it's going to be what we usually get, not dotted, not triplet. It's just going to be 1/8, 1/16, and so on and so on and so on. Right? Pretty simple. Now, of course, what if you want to do the triplets? Well, then you need to go to triplets. So now it's going to be 1/8 triplet. And if you go to dotted, it's going to be 1/8 and then dotted. And then if you go to 16s, it's pretty much you're going to go from 1 to 16. And if you think about this, it's pretty much what you have right here. So, okay, so on this one, notice that you can, and if I turn off this one and turn on this one, you can offset the left from the right by some amount. So if I do something like that, notice that we have the same thing, but the offset is just, offsetting the right channel. So on this one, you do get the same thing, but it's a little bit different. You can do here, let me just go to notes for now. I'm going to do 1/8. Both are on the same place, and this is a very mono sound source, the synth. So we can offset the right channel or the left channel if you wanted to, and we are going to be getting that vibe. One thing that you don't get on the other one is that when you go to the time mode, you cannot offset it. This is grayed out, but on this one you can. Right? That's one of the main differences. Now, of course, it looks funny because of this, but this is actually great. It's a perfect representation of what is going on with your repetitions. Right now, we are standing on notes, but if we bring the default kind of a configuration of the Echo, and now it's just, I made a mistake right there. I need to go back to Echo. This is like when we get it by default. Notice that we have this kind of with the yellow lines, and then we have the dots right here. So these ones are going to be the 16s. Now, so notice that the lines are just not aligned with the dots, and it's because we are dotted. So this is a representation of how your repetitions are going to be translated when you do feedback or when you add more. So in this case, they are not kind of on the dot on the spot right here because we are doing dotted. But as soon as you change it to notes, they're going to be aligned with the dots. So this is a kind of a representation of whatever you're doing right here. That's why when you change it, this is going to be changing as well. Now, the cool thing is that with the mouse, you can just, drag, and it's going to be showing you what is going to be doing. Now, of course, right here is the first echo, the first repetition. And as the feedback grows, it's going to give you a representation of all the repetitions that you're doing. And right now, it's going to, you're going to be getting a lot of feedback. But if you do less, it's just going to tell you how many repetitions you're going to be getting and when it's going to start to fade the repetitions. Now, you can do this manually. You can go high, you can go, you can go faster, you can go super slow. But when you're unsyncing this, let's say that I do the unlink. Notice that you can go with the mouse and make one faster and the other one a little bit slower, and so on and so on. And you can do this manually, which is a great thing. So right here, I have a spectrum so we can see what's going on with, our frequencies. And of course, we got a very dull sound from the analog. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down on the release and I'm showing you what I'm doing so you can reproduce this at home. I'm going to go down. And what we get, if I turn off the echo, we get a very dull sound. What I want to do, I want to bring a sine wave. So if I play and just hold the sine wave and I'm going to turn the oscillator 2 off, we can hear and actually see what's going on right here. This is like the fundamental tone. And I'm going to be cutting some of the frequencies we have right there. So of course, we have more of this and less of this. Now, the main point is that now we need to talk about the input and we need to talk about the feedback. And this is kind of irrelevant. So if I turn this on and I'm going to go all the way down to, on the feedback and all the way down on the wet, we have the input control. So if I play something and I'm going to go up in level just a little bit. And if I go down on the input, nothing happens. And if I go up on the input, nothing happens. So the input, it's something that we can do to drive whatever it's going to go to the tank right here, to the delay, to the feedback. But if you're doing nothing, it's not going to do anything. If I do a little bit, maybe 5% or something, we are going to be getting something. Notice that it's kind of a clipping, it's distorting. So we get that distortion, and now it doesn't sound like a sine wave anymore. It sounds like a sine wave, of course, being distorted. Now, of course, if you go up on the feedback, this is going to change if you're doing more dry and wet. Now, if you go to the other side, notice it's going to get really loud because you're driving this input a lot more. So if I go less, it's going to be less, and if you do more, it's going to drive it a little bit more. So yeah, you can drive the input and of course you're going to be getting a little bit more because you're just crushing it right here. Now you have a different option called D. So if I do mild input and maybe I'm going to go somewhere around here and I go and do D, this is going to bring us distortion. Notice that we see right here that we have a floor noise. And as I drive it, since we are doing distortion, notice that we get that distortion. Of course, it's going to be louder. And notice how the peak looks. They look a little bit different from the other one, right? And it's because we are doing a little bit of distortion. And this, again, will affect whatever we do on the repetitions. Notice it's just clipping right now, the channel. But it goes really loud, so you need to adjust, of course, whatever it is that you're doing. But essentially, with the input and the D, you can introduce or you can clip whatever it is that you're doing on the delay or just bring a little bit of distortion. Right now, I'm just going really crazy to show you the difference. And that this should sound something like this, something very mild. But if you do input and you distort it, it's going to give you that. It's going to give you something else, right? Right. So, okay, so I'm going to go back right now to whatever we have on default. Right, so I'm back to whatever I had from before. On this one, I'm going to go up on the volume just a little bit. So we have just a very simple sound on the analog. This is my sound. And I'm back to a default configuration on the echo. So then we have the feedback. And of course, this is just the feedback. You're going to get less repetitions. And notice that you get a representation right here of how much you're doing. And if you go up, of course, you can reach those levels. But everything is just going to be kind of a feedback and the output is going to go louder. Very kind of a useful and normal thing that you get. Now, this one sounds a little bit different in terms of the feedback. The other one, it just, cannot do that. Even if we go really crazy on the feedback, we just don't get this, we don't get this vibe of just going crazy because we are feedbacking too much. On this one, we do. It's because, of course, this has the same controls, the same idea, but it works a little bit different. So one of the most important things is going to be right here, the filter. Now on the other one you get it, but it's a very kind of a limited filter. It's a band pass filter. On this one it's just a little bit more complex. You get a low pass and you get a high pass. So this is going to be your, of course, your high pass, and this is going to be your low pass. Now the cool thing with this one, and I'm going to do something like that so we can get a bit more repetitions. Alright, so I'm going to go up in level a little bit more right here. Okay, so with this one, we can of course disable the filter, and we are not going to be doing filtering. Now the cool thing is that of course you can chop the lows as much as you want, and you can chop the highs as much as you want right here. So we're going to do that. Now what the cool thing with this one is that you get a resonant peak. So maybe you are going to be chopping this and you want to boost a little bit of the highs. So you're going to be getting, if I go all the way to the wet, we just can really hear this. And if I go down, we can really hear we are just making it darker. So again, this is like a more kind of a complete version of what you have on the other one. You get, of course, the cut on the lows, independent controls, and you get the resonance. Now, if you don't want it, you can turn it off, of course. Now, in this case, I believe this is really useful. For now, I'm just going to be turning it off. Now, let's talk about the modulation. This one, again, gives you kind of the same vibe. A lot of the controls are going to be the same. You have a rate, you have the filter, and you have the time. You know, how fast it's going to do the modulation with the filter, and with the timings, you know, how it's going to be kind of a modulate them. So this is pretty much the same, but you have extended controls, like I said before. So if I go to the modulation, and I'm gonna maybe do something like that. If I go to sync, it's going to sync it, or you can go to free mode. Now the thing is that this one, what we can do, it can modulate the filter and it can modulate the delay times. So if you're doing something right here that it's, you know, pretty much the same, what we are going to be doing with the mod is just modulating the times on the left and the right. Notice that the left and the right are a little bit different. So how fast are we going to be doing this? Well, it's going to be this control. Now you can go really slow and get a kind of a chorus-like sound. Right. So by default, you use a sine wave to modulate the left and the right controls. Now you can go crazy and it's going to sound just really crazy, or maybe you can go to low values and just kind of spread the left and the right a little bit. Now you can go to X4, and this is going to multiply whatever you have right here. So if you have 12, just going to be a little bit more, less, it's just not the same, right? Just more aggressive. So by default, you get a sine wave just to modulate the left and the right. And notice that they have a tiny offset. That's why, of course, when we modulate the times, they sound a little bit different. This is the modulation that is running on the left, and the other one is the modulation that is running on the right side. And it's modulating the times, of course. Now, instead of using a sine wave, you just can do something different, and this will give you kind of a different texture. So if I go up on the wet, notice it sounds a little bit different than the other one. Now, if I go to ramp, this is going to be pretty obvious. And if I do a square, again, everything is going to be a little bit more obvious. And you can do random if you wish. This is like the random. So you have different waveforms just to, you know, just to get a different vibe out of this. Now, one cool thing that you get that you don't get on the other one is the ability to change the phase. So right now we know that we are offsetting the left from the right, but the phase right here is not aligned. If I align the face, if I go to kind of a 0% or something like that, both are aligned, the left and the right. So if I play something, it doesn't matter how much modulation we are doing. Both channels are going to be modulating the same way. So you can decide how much modulation or how you're going to be separating them. If you're going to go all the way, just like that, or you just, maybe if you just want just a tiny bit. Now, the other thing, I'm going to go all the way down in this one, is going to be the modulation for the filter. So, of course, in this case, you're going to need to enable or have something right here. So I'm going to do something maybe like that. Something that we can kind of really hear. Maybe something like that. And now this one, of course, will modulate the filter. But is this kind of moving? If I go really aggressive and just keep pressing, we can really hear it. And it's going up and down. It is up and then down. And this is because we're going really, really slow. And if I go all the way to the 0%, we can really see this. Now, if I go up, of course, it's going to go really fast. And if I offset, we are going to be getting that white stereo spread. Now, I'm going really aggressive on the wet. Maybe doing something like this is just going to sound... just going to sound a little bit better, of course. So I'm going to bring a fresh kind of, the default patch that we get when we throw this on the channel. And we need to talk about the envelope. So this is an envelope that will react or will work on top of whatever we have right here. If I'm not doing anything right here and I go up on the envelope, nothing is going to happen. It's because this envelope will work on this one. So I'm going to kind of make it a little bit obvious. Maybe go somewhere, I'm going to go all the way wet. Why not? So we can only hear the repetitions. And I'm going to go up on the mod, something like that. And we can hear when we play something and I press and hold, we can hear the modulation that we are doing left and right. Maybe I'm going to go to 0 so we can hear the same thing. And it's going to be a little bit more obvious. So as soon as I press it and with no envelope, the modulation starts. And as soon as I release a key, the modulation stops because, we have no feedback. So as soon as I go up on the envelope and I'm going to go all the way 100%, I'm going to be pressing this. Notice that I'm pressing and holding and we don't get the same thing. And I release it. And it's just giving us this kind of a motion. And it's because now we are doing 100% of the envelope and the mod that we have right here. If I do less, it's going to be a lesser effect. Almost nothing. Let me just go around there. Notice that we see and we can hear some kind of a movement. Right, so this is the same thing for the filter. If I go to the filter and do a 100%, we can kind of hear that something is going on, especially with the envelope. Now, if I go all the way down to the envelope, this is just going to be very different. So when you're in 100% of the envelope, you're just hearing the envelope. But what you can do, you can make a blend of whatever you have right here on the modulation and the envelope, and just kind of make a blend of both. You can have a little bit of movement when it starts and when it ends, pretty much, but you keep your constant modulation, whatever it is that you're doing right here. Right, if I go all the way down, notice it's a little bit different. You can go more on the envelope and less of the mod. I'm gonna do it again. Notice that we still get a movement even we are on the 95%. And when I release the keys, we can see it going down. So yeah, you just get extended controls, a little bit more of what you get right here. So back to a default kind of a preset. And we know how the modulation works. Of course, everything we did, it was a little bit too aggressive. Sometimes it's maybe just doing just a tiny little bit is going to give you that something. Maybe you can unsync it and go fast or go slow, and even just make it spread whatever it is that you're doing a little bit more. It's going to give you what you want. Going super aggressive is going to take you to the sound effects kind of a territory. Right, so now we need to talk about the reverb. Now, of course, you get a reverb. It's pretty simple. I feel like I don't even need to explain this. So if I go all the way dry to, to the wet side, and I play something, we just get a reverb, and I'm gonna go up on the feedback so we can really hear this. I'm gonna be playing something, and we get a reverb. If I go down, no reverb. Actually pretty useful. Now, what you get is the different modes. You get a post, you get a pre, and you get a feedback. And they all sound different because we are kind of placing them before or after. So if I go to the pre, and now if I go to the post, notice it sounds a little bit different, especially if I go all the way to the down on the decay. That's the post, and that's the pre, and it sounds very different. The pre sounds cleaner, and the post sounds dirtier. And it's because this one is a little bit more dense. And the feedback, it's just gonna be that. Yeah, so if you put it on the feedback and it's really, really loud, it's gonna start to getting this kind of a feedbacking kind of a sound, especially when you are going up on the feedback on this one. Notice it's going crazy. If you're going less, feedback is going to feedback less. So you need to be careful if you're using the feedback right here and you're doing a lot of reverb and a lot of feedback. So, of course, and if you think about this, it's going to be mild, a little bit more complex, and way complex. Now, of course, I'm going to go right now to the pre, maybe, and right here you get your decay. Right now, the room is kind of very short. So if I, not the room, the reverb, if I go up, it's just going to be super big, so you can get a shimmery kind of a sound with your delays right here, with your delay. So I could, maybe do something like this, maybe cut a little bit of the lows and a little bit of that. And when you play, right, you can get this shimmery kind of sounds. Of course, I'm going really aggressive right here. So you can go down in the decay if you wish. And remember the sound of the original sound source, it's pretty dull. So just doing a little bit of echo, you can just make your sound really, really cool. Now on the same spot, you get the stereo, you get the ping pong, and you get the mid side. I'm gonna bring kind of a default or fresh kind of a, instance of the plugin. And you have the stereo, which is gonna be left and right, especially if you offset it. Then you have the ping pong, which is going to be from left and right. And then you have the mid side. So notice if I go to mid side and I do something, it sounds super mono. We don't get a spread. Why is that? Now the sound source that I'm using, this synthesizer, is on the mono side. It's very mono. So if the sound source that it's coming into the echo, it's super mono, it doesn't matter what you do on the mid side because you don't have a lot of side information. Everything is going to be mids. So if you use the mid side, it's just, you're not going to get anything. It's just going to be mono. But maybe if you do something before reaching the echo, I don't know, something like, let's say I'm going to be putting a chorus. This is going to make, it's going to add side information. So now we are going to be able to hear something, and it's not going to be super mono. It's doing something on the mid side. Now, when you enable the mid side, if you go right here, notice that you can select the tempo or the delay time for the mid and for the sides. So if I unshift this and I go something like that, make it a little bit ridiculous, the mid it's going to be something, and the side, and there's side. It's just going to be very long delay, and the mid is going to be super fast. I'm going to do it, a little bit more obvious. I'm going to be playing something now. So the fast repetitions is the mid, and the slower ones are the sides. So that's what you get on the mid side kind of a, thing, which is not something that you can do on the stereo, because you're going to be doing left and right, and you're not going to do mid side. And especially you cannot do it on the ping pong. So this is a kind of a pretty unique kind of a thing that you get right here. Right, so I'm going to get rid of the chorus ensemble, and I'm going to bring a fresh kind of an echo right here. Right, so that's the fresh echo. So I'm going to be playing something, and I'm going to go all the way up on the stereo. So this, the only thing is going to be doing, especially if I do something like that, and I separate this maybe a little bit more, just going to be wider, or it's going to be mono. 100% it's a full stereo, and on this one it's just doing a little bit of mid-side processing just to make it a little bit wider. And the output, of course, is the output. So now we need to talk about this one because all of this is just very simple. So we need to talk about the last thing. And I'm going to be bringing a fresh start so we can all start from the same place. Now, this is something kind of cool and important. So you get a gate first. I'm going to enable the gate. And this one works just like a standard gate. Now, the difference is that this gate will allow the delay to do its repetitions only if a threshold, if the sound, that's incoming sound source goes over the threshold. And I'm just going to give you an example. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to be playing the synthesizer, and I'm going to go to the amp section. So the envelope, and I did this on purpose, is because if I play a key, if I play it soft or hard, it's always the same. But if you go up on the velocity right here, let me do something like 4. If I play soft, maybe soft, something like that, the volume is not that loud, but if I play hard, it's going to be very loud, right? So this one, what it will do that. If the sound exceeds some threshold, it's going to do the repetitions. If not, it's not going to do it. So I'm going to go down on the release for now. And notice I'm playing something and it's not doing the repetitions, even though it's on. We are just getting, the key I'm playing. And it's because the threshold is 0 dB. And the sound source that is coming out of here, it's pretty quiet. It's -9 dB, so it's not exceeding this. So as soon as I go down, and if my sound source is going to exceed this amount, this volume, it will do the repetitions. Now, what happens if I play soft and the volume is kind of really low? Notice it's not doing it. That's what the gate is doing it. If I play soft and the volume that feeds into the echo is low, it will not do the repetitions. If it's hard, it will do the repetitions. That's, what the gate works, how the gate works. Now, the release, of course, since this is a gate, it needs to open to let the repetitions or the sound go to the feedback and create repetitions. And the release closes the gate. Pretty simple. Now, if you make the release super wide, super long, at some point, if you play consecutive keys, it doesn't matter if you're just kind of playing them softer. The gate, it's not closing for 3 seconds. So it's going to do the repetitions. Let me give you an example. I'm going to play hard and then soft. Notice it's picking it up. It doesn't matter the threshold. It's way low. It's grabbing loud. And the gate is still open, so it's going to catch the soft keys. So you need to kind of select whatever release you need right here to do whatever it is that you're doing. If you're playing fast keys, let's say, if you're playing, something like that, maybe a short release is a better option. If you're doing kind of a patch or something really kind of a smooth, maybe a longer release is just a little bit better. All right, so that's the gate, kind of a useful thing. So then you have the ducking, and this is pretty useful. And for this one, I'm going to go all the way to 100%. And maybe I'm going to do something, a little bit of reverb so we can really hear what is going on, and a little bit of feedback. So the ducking, what we'll do, it will duck whatever processed signal is going out, the wet signal. And it's because maybe you're playing something and whatever it is that you're doing, the repetitions are going to be kind of standing in front of whatever it is that you're playing. So this is going to duck the dry and the wet, and it's kind of do something like that every time that you're playing. Let me give you an example. Right now, it's not doing anything. And notice that we have pretty much the same controls. So I'm going to be going and selecting a threshold. And notice this, now if I'm playing it, it's turning it down. And I'm going to go maybe velocity 0 right here on the synthesizer. So every key I play is going to be pretty much the same. So maybe I'm going to go something a little bit more obvious. And I'm going to keep the release. I'm going to keep it on default. Now, can you hear it? I'm going to press a key and I'm going to hold it. That is super quiet. And when I release the keys, it goes louder. And this is I'm using 100%, so we only are hearing the wet signal. And it's because when I play a key, this is detecting I'm playing a key, so it's going to lower the volume or just, gonna kind of go more to the dry kind of a side. It's gonna duck. That's what it's called, ducking. So when I release the keys, this releases how fast the volume is gonna go back up. And it's 100 milliseconds. If I do it super fast, or maybe 20 milliseconds, which is kind of fast, it's super fast. But maybe I just want to slow kind of going up. So it's gonna slowly go up. And this is special, it's gonna, be a little bit more obvious if we do more feedback. Gonna press something, is ducking the volume, and I release, and then goes up. Alright, cool, done. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to default. And again, the ducking is just gonna duck whatever it is that you're doing while you're playing it. So it's not gonna be standing in between. Now, using it all the way on the wet side just makes no sense. Maybe do a little bit like that and you're gonna still hear the effect. Especially when you go up on the decay. Since you have this kind of a shimmery sounds when you are playing, the sound it's not going to be in between, it's just going to duck it. Right? So, right, very cool thing. Right, so then you have the noise. I'm going to bring whatever we have on default and I'm going to go back. So you have the noise, and this is noise. It's just noise. Now you can select the amount and you can select the morph. The amount is how much of noise you want. Now the idea of this is that, and this is a very, very low noise. It's not a harsh noise. If I go really up, you can really hear it. Now, why do you get noise? Now, the idea of this echo is kind of emulating vintage kind of units. So, on a vintage unit, of course, you get noise. You get this floor noise and different types of noise. So, you can just bring a little bit of that, noise just to make it sound a little bit more vintagey. Now then, if I go all the way up, and so we can really hear this, right? So the morph is just going to give you different types of noises. So if I keep going up, notice it changes. It's more transformer. If I go up, right, so very different noises. Now, you don't have to go all the way to 100%. This could be, you could use this as a sound effect if you wish. And maybe just a little bit of noise is just going to give you that, that tiny little magic that you get with analog gear. So one very common thing on the analog, analog tape domain is the wobble. And what this is pitch imperfections. It modulates the time, just like we did with the LFO. The thing is that when we do it with an LFO, everything is kind of a super controlled. It's not imperfect. It's very controlled because it's always the same modulation. You could go to random, but it's, way too much. This one is going to do that kind of a detuning and it will be imperfect. So that's, the whole idea. So when I play something, I'm going to do a little bit of amount and we are going to be starting to hear this. And we can even see right here how it's just, going up and down in pitch because we are, of course, going 100% of the wet. And the morph, it's just going to go fast or go slow. It's pretty much changing the whole vibe. If I do more, let's just make it obvious. I'm gonna go 100% and I'm gonna do less on the morph. Notice that the transitions, the movement is just, it's a little bit different. I'm gonna go up. And if you go all the way up, it's way too much. Now maybe you want to do a little bit less. You're gonna get this type of modulation. Now, of course, you don't need to go this crazy. This is too much. Maybe just a little bit. It's gonna give you that nice analog vibe, analog type of delay vibe. And even doing a little bit of noise is gonna give you that. we're getting a lot of high frequencies. Does it sound very analog-ish? If I turn off the noise and I turn off the wobble, sounds cool, but it's just not the same. This is just giving you a little bit of that imperfection that you're looking for on that analog kind of a type of gear. Now then you have one extra option, which is going to be the re-pitch. So by default, and I'm just maybe going to go to time mode, and everything is off right here. This one is on. I'm going to play something, and I'm going to do this. So what it's doing when you do this is going to give you this change of pitch when you modulate the times. Something very cool that we get with analog kind of a gear, right? And we know this. Now, this is the re-pitch, what it's doing behind the scenes. But if I turn the re-pitch off, instead of doing this, it's going to attempt to crossfade the timings, because what you're doing, you're changing timing. So the delay is trying to adjust to whatever it is that you're doing right here. But since it's not doing re-pitch, it's going to attempt to crossfade to the new values. So what you get is this kind of a phasey, glitchy type of sound, which could be really useful. Depends on what you want to do. Right, so that's pretty much it. So that's the Echo. Now this one, like I said before, and this is just kind of my opinion, it's like the pro version of the delay. You can achieve pretty much the same, even though this one is a little bit different and it gives you the freeze control. This one has not, you don't get the freeze, but you get other controls that are really cool. Now this one leans towards the vintage kind of a sound, more kind of a vintage echo type of sound. And this one is more digital delay. Right, so if you learned something, remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, you can. Just check the links in the description. And see you on the next one.